Hello, good afternoon, and the very warmest of welcomes indeed to today's iOB business webinar. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on here. My name is Ben, and I'm the resident business coach here at iOB Business, and I will be the one taking you through today's presentation. So just before we get kicked off on today's iOB business webinar, just a little bit about how they operate so that you get the most from today's webinar as we run through it. Okay, so please know, if you do have any questions throughout the session today, you're more than welcome to ask them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen there. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll answer these questions that you may have during the Q&A session at the end of today's webinar, where we'll get through each and every question that's been asked. Okay, so please feel free to ask any questions about business, about marketing, or about the webinar itself. Okay. Now, of course, in between each of the three topics today, we're also going to be giving you a brief pause just to jot down any notes and catch up with any of the content that you might have missed. And in addition to that, give you a chance to ask these questions as well. Okay, so you'd be more than welcome to stay in touch with me in the chat box as we go throughout today's session. Not that we ever have any issues, but if you do experience anything, just let us know in the chat box and we will do our best to help you with it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch off my video camera. So you should still be able to hear my voice, but you shouldn't be able to see my face anymore. And I'm going to go ahead and get the presentation up on screen there for us as well. Okay, so if you just bear with me one moment whilst I'm doing that, that would be awesome. Thank you very much. There we go. Okay, so we've got the presentation up on screen. Now you should be able to see a screen that says how to stop procrastinating for good. This is the topic of today's conversation. It's a very, very good one that I'm very, very excited to present to you today. And if I could just please have a little confirmation in the chat box. If you can hear my voice and you can see the presentation up on screen, okay, a little thumbs up, a yes, a smiley face, whatever you like in the chat box would be perfect. And then I will know that we are ready to rock with today's session. Welcome to those of you just joining us now. We're just getting ready to get kicked off for today's 2 o'clock webinar. Okay, perfect. Thumbs up, good to go, ready to rock. So as I said, if you do have any issues, not that we expect you to, but if you do, just drop it in the chat box and we'll see what we can do to help you out there. All right, so today's topic of conversation, how to stop procrastinating for good. Let's get into it. Your presenter for today is myself. My name is Ben and I am a professional business coach. I specialize in working with small businesses, just like many of the people on here today, and helping them achieve stability and growth. It's what I love. It's an absolute passion and I'm blessed to get to do it every single day. Okay, so beginning with the topic of conversation today, number one, distractions. Okay, we're talking about how to stop procrastinating for good. We're talking about how to beat it once and for all. Okay, so let's figure out exactly what this means. Number one, distractions. Number two, overthinking. Okay, now one or more of us are going to be guilty of this, and it's something that hopefully a lot of people on this webinar can relate to as we're talking through it today. And number three, power planning. Okay, we're going to talk about what it means to be distracted. We're going to talk about what it means to overthink. And finally, we're going to talk about how we can overcome these things with the use of power planning. Okay, it's a very, very powerful tool, one that I'm excited to show you how to use. All right, so without further ado, let's get kicked off then for today's topic number one, distractions. Okay, now, a key cause of procrastination. Okay, and we're talking about, first of all, what the causes of procrastination are. Okay, now a key cause of procrastination is deliberate distraction. Okay, now what I mean when I say deliberate distraction, because you might say to me, well, Ben, what do you mean by deliberate distraction? I never deliberately distract myself. These things just happen. Okay, now an idea that I would love to share with you, a concept, if you will, is that when there is something that we're not particularly keen on doing, okay, for example, a difficult project, a large task, something that's been on our to-do list for a long time, there's lots and lots of distractions around us all the time. Okay, now that could be anything. It could be your phone, it could be your social media, it could be another task that you have to do, it could be a project you've been working on, another project, it could be anything. And you think, well, do you know what, I'm just going to go and do that. I'm just going to get that done for now, because then at least that'll be out of the way and then I can come back and focus on this project. Okay, now the truth of it is, if you're sitting there trying to do this project and you go ahead and you do something else deliberately, it's then becoming a deliberate distraction, and you're actually taking yourself away from the task in hand purposely, because it's not something that you want to do, or it's something that you don't necessarily feel capable of doing, even if that might not be correct, okay, or true. So a key cause of procrastination is deliberate distraction. Okay, now this is something that we have to consider is an absolute possibility. Okay, Now, when we're looking at the different ways that we deal with these tasks, if we're putting something as potentially more important than this one, we have to ask ourselves why, okay? If this is one that we constantly jump away from, we need to think, well, is the other thing actually more important? Or is it in essence just something that I can do easier? Okay, because we're gonna talk about this. Okay, we're gonna talk about overthinking. We're gonna talk about different reasons that you can feel like you want to take your attention away from whatever it is in hand. Okay, so the next thing I would ask you to do is carefully assess your environment. Okay, look at where you are and ask yourself if there are any potential distractions around you. Okay, now this is a big one for those of us that work from home. If working from home or even having a home office is something that you do, there's very likely going to be more distractions than there would otherwise be if you were, say, working in an office environment. Now, I agree with you. For those of you that are thinking this, not always strictly true, right? Sometimes in an office, there are other people, there's noisy machines, there's noisy equipment, there's people shuffling around, there's people having conversations at the water cooler, all that stuff, right? I understand. However, there are a difference between these distractions, okay, which is sort of like this external noise, and the deliberate distractions that you might have elsewhere, the deliberate distractions that you give to yourself. Okay, so to compare these water cooler conversation distractions from a work environment, in an office environment, to being at home and the washing needs done. Okay, now that's a different type of distraction. The washing isn't making a noise, but you can feel that it needs to be done. Okay. However, if you are engrossed in a personal work task and you feel like you're making really, really good progress, you're absolutely smashing it, it's not going to bother you that the washing hasn't been done. Okay. It's only going to bother you if you are looking for a deliberate distraction, something to get you out of doing what you're currently doing. Okay. That's why many of us now, I haven't ever looked at a statistic on this, but lots of people that I speak with in a personal coaching capacity, they share these things with me. Okay. And what we're looking at is somebody who might decide to go and start cleaning the house instead of, whilst they're technically supposed to be working, because that's something that they can win easily. They can say, right, well, at least I can go and do that. I can go and do the dishes, or I can go and do the washing. And that's something that I can accomplish. Okay. So they'll take themselves away from a work task that they're struggling with, and they'll go and do a personal task instead that they've done lots and lots of times before. So when I ask you the question, look carefully for distractions around you, I don't just mean actual noise or actual physical distractions nearby. There's also mental distractions of, well, is there something around the house that needs done? Is there something around the office that needs done? Could I organize that paperwork? Could I sort that file drawer that's been messy for a month? Okay. They're deliberate distractions. And what we've got to think about is not only what these distractions are, but why we're even considering distracting ourselves with them in the first place. And the true cause of this might not actually truly be because it needs done. The likelihood of it is that we are somewhat feeling a bit overwhelmed by the tasks that we have in hand. So to give you some examples, social media, games, TV, house chores, okay? Social media, Facebook, for example, it's a big one. Okay. It takes us away. It's so easy just to pick up your phone. It's literally like muscle memory. Pick up your phone, open your phone, jump on your social media, almost as if you don't even know you're doing it. And then you start scrolling, and then you see something, you see a message from someone, and that's it. You're off. Okay. You're in your phone for 10, 15, 20 minutes before you come back to doing whatever it was that you were doing. Okay. Games, if you're somebody who enjoys games, it's like games on your phone, games on a games console, games on a computer. It's easy to go and start playing these little games, just to kind of kill a bit of time. You say, well, actually, I don't really want to deal with the task right now. So instead, I'm just going to play Minesweeper. I know probably none of us have done that in a while, but a good example is you'll just pull that up and say, okay, I'm just going to start doing that just for 10 minutes. I'm going to relax. Then I'm going to get back to the task on hand. Okay. We need to make sure that we're not doing this. TV, house chores, again, you're in the house, you walk past the TV's on, you think, oh, what's that? And you sit down for 10 minutes. It's fine. I'm just going to have a cup of tea and watch the TV for a minute. Before you know, you've been there for an hour. Okay. So these are the types of things that we have to think about. Now, ultimately, it's not that you would rather do these things. Okay. It's more likely that the task you're procrastinating on is getting the better of you. It's getting the better of you. So you're deciding to go and do something else that you can control, because it feels like we have a lack of control when there's something that is intimidating us or making us feel incapable or too daunting, too challenging. For whatever reason, we don't like it. It's boring. It's going to take a long time. It's for a client that we're not 100% sure how to deal with. All kinds of different reasons that we can procrastinate on these things. Okay. Now, perspective and context can change. Okay. Now, for those of us that are new coming into business, it's, there's always, big, exciting things happening. And for those of us that have been in the business for a while, again, big, exciting things happening. But once we've been in business for a while, it can be easy to sort of allow the novelty to be taken away of the fact that we are actually, running our own business, and we do actually have really important and exciting things to do. So we want to keep that excitement alive all the time. Okay. So ultimately, it's not that you would rather do these things. It's not that you would rather be distracted by these things. It's simply, usually, most often, that it's the task that's getting the better of you. Because if you could come to your desk and smash it, you would. Okay. So we have to think about, why are we being distracted by these things? All right. So that brings us to the end of topic number 1. I'll be right back with you in just a moment's time for topic number 2. All right, fantastic. So hopefully you've had a moment there to jot down any notes that you had to take, and indeed fired away with any questions that you had to ask as well. So let's move ourselves on to topic number 2 then, overthinking. Okay, now, overthinking is a big topic of conversation and something that we can discuss very in depth. Okay, so what I'll do on today's topic number 2 is we will discuss it in detail, but we'll make sure that we're moving at a good pace, because overthinking is such a big conversation, something that can be spoken about so much, that there are many avenues that we can take. So what I'm going to do here is stick to some core points and stuff that we can talk about. Okay, so first of all, overthinking leads to inaction. Okay, now I want to give you an example of this. We bring a new client on board. Fantastic. It's exciting. Okay. We're going to start earning X amount of money per month extra, or if it's our first client, we're going to start earning X amount of money, period. Okay. Fantastic. That's great news. Now, during the prospecting stage, okay, to clear up that little bit of business lingo, if you're unfamiliar, prospecting is the prospecting stage, as it were, is when you're sort of working with a potential business or person that might then come into the business as a client. Okay. So in the prospecting stage, everything seemed fine. Social media management, website development, whatever it is that you were going to do with them, you weren't too worried about that. You were just more focused on bringing the customer in, or the prospective customer at this point, into the business to work as a customer or client. Fantastic. Okay. So there hasn't been too much overthinking. There's just been excitement, novelty, bringing the client in. Now, once we have had the proposal accepted, client can come in, it can feel a little bit more real. Okay. And we say, well, I don't actually know if I'm capable of this. I don't know if the requirement of social media, standards that the client needs me to meet, I don't know if I'll be able to meet those. I was so excited about it. I'd had it all planned out. I've written all my proposal documents. I've even got my templates ready. I don't know if that's the caliber that the client needs. Okay. So I don't do anything on day 1. That's fine. I say, I'm going to give myself a day to think about it. Day 2 comes in. Oh, I'm still not sure. I'm going to give myself till day 3. Day 3's in. You're thinking, well, I'm just going to look at the social media page again, but I'm probably overthinking it. Everything's probably fine. Okay. So you don't take any action on day 3. Day 4 and 5 come along and you think, you know what? It's near the end of the week. I'm just going to leave it. Okay. Now comes into the Monday of the next week. Okay. So now we're on the Monday of the next week. We still haven't done anything. It's been over a week. Clients wondering why no social media campaigns have been launched. Okay. We were thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. We were taking away from the credibility that we had given ourselves and the credibility that we had deserved, because we were discounting the value of our own work, not financially, but credibility wise. We'd worked very hard on proposal documents. We'd worked very hard on putting together the materials that they needed. We knew that it met the caliber that they needed it to meet. But because we started to doubt ourselves, we overthought. Okay, now there's a big difference, and we're going to cover more of this throughout topic number 2, but there's a big difference between giving something diligent thought and overthinking. Okay, due diligence is a very good thing to do, something to very much consider, but overthinking is a repetitive cycle of self-doubt in a lot of cases. Okay, so overthinking leads to inaction and is not something that we want to be entertaining. As I said, you've then let a whole week go by with this client with very good work that you could have been doing, but instead now they're wondering where their project is and you're wondering why you haven't delivered it yet, because and only because you were doubting yourself and you shouldn't have been. Okay, so it's a very good example of how this overthinking scenario can lead to inaction. Okay, now thinking is great. Overthinking is allowing ourselves to brew doubt within our mind. Okay, if we spend too long thinking about anything, you can convince yourself not to do it. Okay. If there's a holiday that you've been wanting to take for years and years and years, okay, and it's always something you've wanted to do, but all of a sudden it becomes real when you have the resources to book it, you have the time to book it, and then you start to book it and you think, oh, I don't know, is that the right hotel? Oh, do I want to do those activities or do I want to do these activities? Oh, but I've been feeling a bit tired lately. Am I just going to feel tired the whole time and not enjoy it? Or, oh, I don't know if they really do the type of food that I like to eat when I'm there. So actually, it might be best if I just don't go. Okay. Something that you could have been looking forward to for so long, all of a sudden, because you started to overthink it, it can begin to brew doubt. Okay. And you can then convince yourself that it's something that you don't want to do because you've given it too much time, you've given it too much thought, you've got yourself too worked up about it to the point now where you firsthand believe that it's not a good idea or that it's not possible. Okay. So thinking is great. Thinking is a fantastic thing. Thinking is something that we should always do. The overthinking component is where we begin to saturate a thought so much that we actually don't even know where the initial doubt came from anymore because we spent so long brewing over the same thing. And often when we're brewing over something like that, it's over the negative component, not the positive component. Okay, so after the doubt has been created, it feels very real. It becomes very, very difficult to get rid of. So even if you start to then tell yourself after overthinking, oh, it's fine, what I was thinking wasn't 100% clear, it wasn't 100% accurate. Okay, you can then say to yourself, well, it's all right. I just overthought it a bit, but I'm actually going to crack on and get it done now. It's very, very difficult to believe yourself when you're saying things like that because you spend so long in that overthinking cycle. Now, it's not to say that it's impossible to overturn and realize, actually, okay, maybe I did overthink that a little bit. Okay, it is, somewhat possible, absolutely. However, would it not be so much easier to avoid this overthinking cycle in the first place? Okay, so after the doubt's been created, it becomes very difficult, but not impossible, to get rid of it. Okay, so if there's something that you're overthinking just now, something you're concerned about, a problem with a client or a business decision that you've been thinking about, okay, consider this that you might be overthinking it to some extent in some component, in some way, shape, or form. Okay, now it's not always the case. If there are genuine reasons as to why you can't do something, there are genuine reasons. Okay, but a lot of the time, we have to trust our gut instinct. If we believed it was a good idea in the first place, it probably still is. Okay. So if you're ever unsure, allow yourself to get started, even if the work is imperfect. Okay. Now, what I want you to think about here in this component of overthinking, it's so much easier to get started by doing something and start rolling with it than it is to try and perfect it the first time around. Okay. So if you're ever unsure about how good you're going to be at a project or how well you're going to perform for a client, just allow yourself to get started. Okay. Even if you believe to some extent that the work is imperfect, because imperfect can be improved upon. But nothing, as in no work being done at all, it's very, very difficult to improve on nothing, in that context, maybe seemingly ironic, okay, because it's very easy to improve on nothing. But in this specific context, you can't improve on nothing because there's nothing to improve on. If you don't do it, if you don't create something, then you can't have anything to improve upon. Okay. But if you just start the work, even if it's slightly imperfect, now I don't mean very subpar, I mean slightly imperfect, then it can be improved. Okay. You can work with the client to iron out imperfections. And with almost every new working relationship that I've ever witnessed or been a part of, nothing is perfect straight from the off. Okay. You are two individual people, two individual businesses that are trying to figure out how to work together. Okay, so there are always going to be things that need ironed out. Now, that brings us to the end of topic number 2. All right, so I will join you again in just a moment's time after this brief pause for the third and final topic of today's conversation. For now, please take this moment to jot down any notes and indeed fire away with any questions that you might have for me, and it'll be my pleasure to answer them at the end of today's session. Fantastic. So hopefully you've had a chance to do that now. Let's move on to the third and final conversation of today's webinar. Okay, power planning. So on average, it can take you 15 minutes to regain your focus on a task after losing it. Now, isn't this cool? Okay, this is something that I learned a while ago. And it's something that I carry with me in my day-to-day life now. Okay, because what we need to understand is each time you become distracted from a task, it can take you 15 minutes to regain full focus on it. Now, of course, you can go back to doing that task immediately, okay? But what I like to refer to this as is being in the zone. If you've ever been writing an essay in school or university, or you've been working on a project, you've been doing something in work, you've been building a website, you've been doing graphic design, building a PPC campaign, whatever it is that you've been doing, you will be in the zone. You will know exactly what I mean when I say that. Okay, nothing can distract you. Your fingers are making burn marks on the keyboard because you're moving that fast. Okay, metaphorically, of course. So what we're looking at here is being in the zone. So it can take you about 15 minutes to get back into the zone every single time you become distracted from the task. Okay. Now, what we need to think about is, well, if I'm going to get distracted and it's going to take me 15 minutes to become refocused on the task, that's something I need to be very, very careful of. Okay. Because that could end up wasting half, if not my entire day by the time I'm finished. Okay. Now, when we're thinking about how this can affect us, it can affect us drastically. Okay, because if every time we get distracted, it's 15 minutes to come back on. If we get distracted 10 times in a day, that's 2.5 hours that we could potentially have wasted. Okay, so many of us begin to lack focus and enthusiasm after extended periods of time working on the same task. All right, now what we need to think about with this task and with this concentration element that we're talking about here, when we're talking about power planning, okay, many of us begin to lack focus and enthusiasm after extended periods of time working on the same task. So what we can do is we can take scheduled breaks. We can break it down into chunks. And what we're talking about right back in topic number one, when we're considering the fact that, oh, okay, well, potentially the reason that I struggle to focus sometimes, or the reason why there are some things that I think about when I shouldn't be thinking about them because I should be focusing on something else, is, we've just been in that kind of arena for too long. We've been spending too much time on one thing. So many of us begin to lack focus and enthusiasm after extended periods of time working on the same task. Instead, let's consider this. Okay, we've got a big, massive Goliath task to do. Okay, now we can break this big Goliath task down into half an hour chunks, 1 hour chunks. We could even just do 2 hours today, 2 hours tomorrow, 2 hours on Wednesday, so on and so forth. Okay, now many of us begin to lack this focus because we don't do this. Okay, we don't decide to break it down. We just think, you know what, that's a 15-hour project. I'm just going to smash it out over 2 days and it's going to be done. Okay, by the time the 15 hours is complete, and by the time you get to the end of the second day, you're thinking to yourself, phew, I'm absolutely exhausted. Okay. Now, the caliber and quality of your work when you're absolutely exhausted, is it going to be top tier? Probably not. Okay. But if you're refreshed and rejuvenated every single day because you're just doing 2 hours a day, the caliber of work that's going to come out is probably going to be quite high. Now, you'll probably look back on these big Goliath tasks that you've done and actually be impressed with yourself and think, how on earth did I manage to deliver that at that high of a quality, that consistently? And the likelihood is probably because you broke it down into chunks and you took your time whilst you were doing it. Okay. Nothing amazing was ever really rushed. Okay. Now, again, it's not a quote, it's not a statistic, it's just an observation. So power planning allows you to pick the best time of day in the most manageable time frames. Okay. What we've got to think about is looking at the best time of day. When are you most energized? When are you feeling the best? When are you feeling most alert? Are you a morning person, an afternoon person, an evening person, a late night person, a super early morning person? Okay, for some of us, your most productive hours could be between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m., or they could be between 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Okay, it just totally depends on you and who you are as a person. So power planning allows you, this theory of power planning allows you to pick the best time in the day. Okay, when are you most energized? When are you feeling most pumped? Okay, in the most manageable time frames as well. So are you steadily consistent for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 120 minutes? Okay, 2 hours. Maybe you can go for 2 hours at a time and not feel tired, okay? But it's totally up to you and totally up to you to establish within yourself, how do I work best? Where do I feel best? What am I most confident in? When am I going to deliver my highest caliber of work? Because this is what you need to be thinking about. And this is a huge component of power planning, okay? So for example, mid-morning, maybe when you're most alert, okay? 30-minute bursts with a 10-minute break in between. Spread the task over 5 days to remove all intimidation. Okay, so say it's a 2.5 hour task that you need to take on. Okay, you don't want to sit and do the full 2.5 hours at once because it's going to tire you out. Fine, fair enough. Spread the task over 5 days at 30 minutes a day. Okay, or tackle it over 2 days and take a 10-minute break, or however you want to do it. Okay, it's completely up to you to figure that out. Okay, this is just an example for you. So you do it mid-morning every day because that's when you're sharpest. That's when you are most ready to go. Okay, so remove the intimidation from this, remove that theory, and you might feel better about the task in hand. And that, in a nutshell, is power planning. Okay, so What we'll do now is we will give it another brief pause before we move on to the recap on today's session. Okay. Now, whilst we're running through the recap, we will be collecting the questions as well. So please do ask away with any final questions you might wish to ask, and it'll be a delight to answer them for you at the end of today's session. Fantastic. So let's move on to the recap then for today's session. Avoid deliberate distraction. Okay. Make sure that you're not purposely distracting yourself because the task at hand seems too big or too intimidating. Break it down, learn to teach yourself. I can do this. I can absolutely do this, and I'm going to do it. Number two, don't allow doubt to creep in. Okay. Don't think about something so much that you actually do full circle and end up becoming negative about something you were once positive. And break large tasks down. Okay. It helps you digest them better. It helps you move forward at a more effective pace. Ironically, you'll probably end up getting the project done quicker because you're not taking longer due to being exhausted. Okay. So as always, a massive thank you for taking the time to join us on today's IOB business webinar. It's been a pleasure presenting to you. If you'd like to talk to a member of our team, you're more than welcome to do so. You can head over to iob-business.com/talk-to-us. And on there, you can go ahead and book a call at a time that suits you. When you do click that link, you'll see a calendar that looks like this one. So I'm going to leave that up there on screen for you whilst I go and grab the questions from today. First question. I struggle to find time to get tasks done. Awesome. Okay, great question. So my answer to this, a quick one and a very, very effective one, hopefully. Do you struggle to find time, or are you spending time doing other things that you don't necessarily need to be doing right at that point in time? Okay, so for example, if you find yourself in the middle of the day doing a lot of washing or, prepping food or things like that, if you're at home, these are just examples of something that you might be doing. If that is the case, consider whether that could wait and whether you could focus on some work tasks instead. Okay, just a suggestion, just an idea, but I know from speaking with other clients firsthand, and even myself firsthand, that these are things that can get in the way. So we need to ask ourselves not the question of, am I struggling to find time? We need to ask ourselves the question, am I spending time doing something else when I should be doing this? Okay, amazing question. Thank you for asking. Next question. I work in an environment with a lot of distractions. Perfect. Cool. Okay. So what we can do is position your workspace where you're not facing the distractions. Okay. If you absolutely can't avoid it, try and get a workspace together where at least you're looking out the window or you're looking at a wall, as exciting as that sounds. Okay. If you're sort of looking into the room, if you work from home in a home office, I'm assuming, or a busy office, if you're in an office environment, I understand you might not want to turn your back to people. Okay. But sometimes if you really want to be able to focus, you don't need to be seeing in your peripherals other things going on or other things that could be distracting you. So where possible, try and spin your desk around or get yourself into an environment where you're not distracted. Okay. Even if that's as simple as moving your desk to a window or moving your desk into a corner or a wall or something like that. Okay. Hope that helps. Another awesome question. Much appreciated. Do we have any more questions from today? No, doesn't look like we do. Okay, well, as always, an absolute pleasure. I very much look forward to seeing you again on the next IOB business webinar. Take care and bye for now.